Church. I'm Dan Freemyer, Senior Pastor, and I am so faces this morning. So happy to see your faces at all, anywhere. As you'll remember, or most of us have figured out, a few weeks ago we went back to masks optional. Hopefully we'll be able to stay at that. There's all kinds of different rumblings of different things that Dr. Carroll will advise us of in days ahead, but we do feel comfortable being in this state right now. So I do have a few announcements. Last night we enjoyed our first time together as a family over food in quite some time with our bake-off. And the real winners of our bake-off were actually Pam Carroll and the fellowship committee for pulling that together and for getting us to. Let's thank them. It was so good to be together and to enjoy each other and to laugh and to play silly games and to put ourselves into sugar comas. So those of you who weren't here, please put up with us who were as we're continuing to come down off of those sugar highs. Pam set up a system where we were all required to eat all of the desserts, and so we've got enough sugar flowing through our veins for the next couple of months. But I do have an opportunity that you've probably not heard about unless you happen to see it in the newsletter this week. This Tuesday, I will be co-leading a conversation on beloved community, and that is Tuesday night at from 6 to 8. From 6 to 7 is a picnic dinner, because this is all outdoors in Pierce Park here on Daniel Island. And then from 7 to 8, I and David Washington, who is the pastor of Old Bethel Baptist Church, Old Bethel Methodist Church on the peninsula, actually the oldest Methodist church building in the state of South Carolina. We will be co-facilitating a conversation which is sponsored by the Low Country Faith Leaders Council, and this is really about creating beloved community in our Low Country area along racial lines. And so this is growing out of the Low Country Faith Leaders winter Bible study that we're just coming out of, and so they've asked David and I to help facilitate this conversation. And it's going to be right here on Daniel Island, right around the corner. So I encourage you to join with us. Now that will mean that Terri Wilson's conversation on our Lenten guide will take a hiatus for 1 week, and so we won't be having that Zoom activity going on that evening. We still do have a book study going on because, we're not going to shut everything down, but there's lots of activities going on. But I do, if you are at all available, I would encourage you to join me at Pierce Park on Tuesday evening. The Retired Men's Breakfast is on Thursday morning. If you've not already made your reservation, please let Harry know this morning, or just show up. But I'm sure there'll be enough food. But it's always helpful if we know who's coming in advance. The Walk for Water to support Water Mission is this Saturday. We have one of the top 10 fundraising teams so far. We have over 18 members. Who all is planning to walk? Raise your hand. Okay, raise them higher, because everybody whose hand is not raised, I need you to find one of these people whose hand is raised and make your pledges to them for their walk, because Baptists, we're competitive. We have to up the game and raise that even more. But we are.
You can just give it to the team if you don't want to offend them.
That's true. You can't, if you don't want to offend any particular members, you can just donate to the team. So says our team captain in the back. But we do thank Tom and Rebecca Jones for pulling this team together and for getting us going. In the back, there is a a plastic bucket that says Pinwheels for Great Childhoods. And what that is, the children's ministry is collecting money to purchase pinwheels, and we will have those out on the grounds during the month of April. And that is because April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and so we are joining in that effort to make that more aware. Then we've got Cooperative Baptist Fellowship for South Carolina coming up on April 1st, the Nehemiah Action for Charleston Area Justice Ministries on April 4th, and be sure and look at those in the newsletter on the back of your worship guide for more information. Now today I'm going to introduce you in advance to Sam and Melody Harrell, who are with us today. They have served CBF field personnel for 17 years in Kenya, and for the past 7 years, Sam has served as the Associate Coordinator for Global Missions for the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship. They live in Cedar Grove, North Carolina. Who knows where Cedar Grove is? Yeah, I didn't think so. Hillsboro. Actually, she said they live in Cedar Grove, but no one knows where that is, and she does her shopping in Hillsboro. So we are privileged to have Sam and Melody with us. Sam will bring our sermon this morning and gave a presentation earlier on global migration. So, and this is all part of our collection and emphasis on global missions for the month of March. So if you have not already made your planned gift to the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship offering for global missions, I encourage you to be considering what that gift will be. Now, as we turn our attention to worship, know that Christ is with you.
The congregation will lead us in the call to worship today, so please join me in the call to worship.
When we walk the road with Jesus,
it will lead next door and around the world.
When we walk the road with Jesus,
we walk alongside others with whom others refuse to travel.
When we walk the road with Jesus,
we walk with refugees looking for a safe place and helpful hearts.
When we walk the road with Jesus,
we are led to places where our presence matters. God, let our every thought, word, and deed during these Lenten days
be signs of our love for you and of your love for the world.
Just a closer walk with thee, grant it, Jesus, is our plea.
Daily walking close to thee, let it be, dear Lord, let it be.
Our Old Testament reading this morning is Psalm 133. How very good and pleasant it is when kindred live together in unity. It is like the precious oil on the head, running down upon the beard of Aaron, running down over the collar of his robes. It is like the dew of Hermon, which falls on the mountains of Zion. For there the Lord ordained his blessing, life forevermore. Hear what the Spirit is saying to God's people. Thanks be to God.
Amen.
join me as we pray together? God, it's especially good to be in your house this morning, gathered with our friends and family of faith. We give thanks for the crispness in the air and the light and beauty that surrounds us. And we thank you for all the ways you remind us of your presence among us. This morning and this past week, we've been focusing our attention on global mission, the call to share our resources and your love with those outside the borders of our buildings and country. And we have named those who serve through the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship, and we have given our offerings and pledged our support to those who faithfully minister alongside your children in cities, in towns, and villages around the globe. Oh God, may their mission and ours be your mission. May we all listen for your call on our lives and choose to follow. We pray in the name of the one who calls. Amen.
Today's gospel reading is 2 Corinthians 1, 3 through 11. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of all consolation, who consoles us in all our affliction, so that we may be able to console those who are in any affliction, with the consolation with which we ourselves are consoled by God. For just as the sufferings of Christ are abundant for us, so also our consolation is abundant through Christ. If we are being afflicted, it is for your consolation and salvation. If we are being consoled, it is for your consolation, which you experience when you patiently endure the same sufferings that we are also suffering. Our hope for you is unshaken, for we know that as you share in our sufferings, so also you share in our consolation. We do not want you to be unaware, brothers and sisters, of the affliction we experienced in Asia, for we were so utterly, unbearably crushed that we despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt that we had received the sentence of death, so that we would rely not on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead. He who rescued us from so deadly a peril will continue to rescue us. On him we have set our hope that he will rescue us again, as you also join in helping us by your prayers, so that many will give thanks on our behalf for the blessing granted us through the prayers of many. Hear what the Spirit is saying to God's people.
Thanks be to God.
Y'all better scoot over a little bit. Okay. Do y'all know what an antonym is?
I don't know.
You know? Who else? Have you heard synonyms and antonyms before? It's like things that are the same. Yes, antonyms. You just had to think for a minute. So I want to do a couple with you guys today. So I'm going to tell you a word, and you tell me the opposite. Okay? I'll start really easy. Bad.
Good.
Full. Hot.
Cold.
Kind. That's a good word. Or cruel. Left. Get a little harder. Oh, this is easy. Fast.
Slow.
Before.
After.
Import. That was a little harder, a little tougher. That's okay. I don't expect you to know all of them. Top.
Bottom.
Shiny.
Flat.
This is a tough one.
Dirty.
Could be, or dull, just not the opposite of shiny. Child.
Adult.
Peace. Yeah. Truth.
Lie.
Friend.
Enemy.
Okay, one more. Frenemy. That's kind of an in-between word, I guess. What about this one? Unity. That's a good guess. Unity. Do you know what unity means?
I know what unit means.
Okay, what's
It means like an object or like a.
yeah, that's one meaning. That's one meaning. Oh, you're getting there. Yes, Ellis.
A group of people together fighting for something.
Or working on something. Yes, that's unity, being together. So what would the opposite of working together be?
Working against each other.
Or being divided. That was the hardest one. Okay, so let me ask you one more question. This all relates, by the way. Y'all know what this is.
Puzzle piece.
Right, but what's the picture? Maybe corn. Can you tell from just one piece?
Yes.
You can tell what the whole puzzle is. I promise you that's not corn. I've seen the whole puzzle. So puzzles are a really cool way to think about unity because nope, you're going to get to see what it is. You can tell everybody later. But you can't really have a puzzle with just one piece, right? But if you put all the pieces together, well, you could make a new puzzle, but you'll never know what the original was. So we're going to figure that out today. We are talking about unity in Big Church, and at WOW, we're going to talk about unity as well and have like a unity day together. I think that's a good goal for everybody. Let's pray real quick.
Can I take my shoes off?
Dear God, thank you for today, and thank you for questions, and thank you for words that help us to think. Please help us to have a good day with each other in your house. Amen.
Good morning, everybody. It's really good to be with you here this morning. Several of you have asked, where are you from? And that's always a hard question for Melody and I. In fact, when we were traveling with our family back in the day, our 3 boys, whenever somebody would ask us that, they would all look at us to see what we were going to say. And they called it the K-bomb, the Kenya bomb. As soon as we said Kenya, oh, here they go, right? Melody and I were born in Kenya and Uganda, and our parents were next-door neighbors in Tanzania before we were born. So ours is an arranged marriage, for sure. About 7 years ago, we made our way this way from our assignment in Kenya to Atlanta, and we migrated over to Hillsborough, North Carolina to take care of my father in his last days. And we remained there, and our responsibilities include sort of caring for field personnel around the world and their work and coordinating that effort. So it's great to be with you here this morning. I guess the first words that I need to share with you are thank you. Thank you for your care of Jonathan and Tina Bailey. Your Encourager Church status with them has meant a great deal to them. In their various endeavors, I had the privilege of going to Bali about 4 years ago for one of their team meetings, and it's just so evident when people fit in a place and the work suits them and they're engaged in that work. So thank you for encouraging them. And as I shared a little bit earlier during our Sunday school time, your work through the Christies, Scott and Susan, has been vital to my life, helping me to pick up pieces at various times in my life after the embassy bombing in Kenya, after a failed election ended in ethnic clashes, after we had a robbery at our house with 12 men who beat our friends half to death. They were there to kind of hold us and get us restored again. And that work that you as a congregation have done in supporting them is very important, and it continues to be so as Scott is on call for our member care team. Thank you for your prayers for our field personnel who are in Ukraine, Gennady and Mina Podgaiski, who are here at this moment. You may not know, Gennady is Russian by birth. His parents are still in Russia. Mina is from Mexico. They make quite a team. Melody and I had the privilege of being on a field team with them for years. We were a part of an urban team, believe it or not just an urban U.S. team, but an urban international team, where we basically placed ourselves in critical strategic urban settings. For them it was Kiev, and with us it was Nairobi, in order to minister on behalf of CBF. So most of our team was from sub-Saharan Africa, but the Podgaiskis and a couple of others from the States. So we enjoyed many years of fellowship with them, and our kids grew up together. So thank you for your prayers for them. I was with them on Thursday and Friday. Right now they're in Black Mountain, North Carolina, and they spend all night on the phone counseling people in Ukraine, whether it's in a bomb shelter, whether it's in a car making their way through roadblocks, and trying to help them network with safe houses as they escape to Poland. You can imagine this is a tremendously difficult time for them. The Village of Hope, which was CBF's initial work, has been bombed. Thankfully, the folks had all evacuated and the residents were not hurt. Listening to that story be narrated by a foster mom and one child who was in the basement of the nearby church, as the Russian tanks came by and bombed there was a guardhouse and a light tower, and then the tank itself ran into one of their very own road mines and blew up. Anyway, it's a tough time, and there are no easy answers. Dan asked me if I had any words for the congregation to ponder, which he said he would put on the front of the bulletin, which he did. These are not easy words. When you have a moment sometime this week, reflect on these. They're important words about the overwhelming durability and power of love that doesn't cancel out suffering, but it makes suffering at the end of the day a non-entity, because love is all-consuming. It isn't defensive in that it needs to control all suffering. It's just bigger than suffering. But these words are difficult words to hear. So thank you. The Swiss theologian Emil Brunner said these words: "The church exists by mission, just as fire exists by burning. Where there is no mission, there is no church. And where there is neither church nor mission, there is no faith." Let me read that again. The church exists by mission, just as fire exists by burning. Where there is no mission, there is no church. And where there is neither church nor mission, there is no faith. I hear a lot of pastors worried these days. Are people going to come back to church after the pandemic? In what was possibly already a declining scenario. And sometimes I wonder, is that the right question to ask? Or is the question to ask, how can we be relevant to the world and let the rest take care of itself? We need to be on mission, otherwise there is no combustion that's happening. So what is mission? Well, in some form or fashion, it involves a proximal relationship to where God is at work. We've kind of turned the corner in recent years to really understand, thanks to a guy called Bosch, that actually the mission is God's mission. It isn't ours. We only join God in God's mission. So it's being close to what God is doing makes us be on mission. And certainly God is at work everywhere and all around and in all of creation. But God's activity is most notable in the presence of great love and great suffering, which is the very pattern of the universe. It's not uncommon for us to be really attracted to one of those and to repel or be repelled by the other one. You might be thinking, Sam, look, we've had enough suffering. All I have to do is turn on the TV and I see it untold. And I would counter by asking you, does witnessing love or suffering through the media cause you to stop and earnestly participate in that love or suffering? Through prayers of thanksgiving and gratitude or earnest entreaty on behalf of those who are suffering? Does it lead to some form of engagement or just to the wringing of hands? And to what end? We could all do with a little more engagement and a little less wringing of hands. Believe me, I'm right there with you. Paul shared in 2 Corinthians about suffering and comfort. He called the antithesis or the antonym, suffering and comfort. And essentially, he says, if we are distressed, it is for your comfort and salvation. If we are comforted, it is for your comfort, which produces in you patient endurance of the same sufferings we suffer. And our hope for you is firm, because we know that just as you share in our sufferings, so also you share in our comfort. It doesn't really answer the problem of evil or pain or suffering. It just makes it meaningful. if you can use your suffering to some other end besides wringing of hands. As a 10th grader, as missionary kids in my sphere would do, when we ran out of 9th grade, the Mennonite school that we went to, we had to go off to boarding school. The great Rift Valley Academy, whose cornerstone was laid in 1906 by Teddy Roosevelt on one of his hunting safaris. For Melody, it came before, in 4th grade, to an Anglican boarding school because Idi Amin had chased their family out of Uganda. But for me, 10th grade, I was ready to be a man. I had my trunk packed weeks before, and there was the lure. My brother and my sister had gone to this boarding school before me, and so I was really ready to, get out of the house, right? And as my folks dropped me off at the boarding school and they drove away, I had this gnawing fear in the pit of my stomach all of a sudden. And over the next several days, I realized how much I missed home, how much I wasn't prepared for this experience, how alone I felt, even though I had friends and I knew about this place. By the end of a week or so, I determined I would run away. And so I did. I just ran to the wrong house. She turned me in to the principal. And he sat there at 11 o'clock one night and he told me how God had led me to this place and how he felt that this was going to be a good thing. I've forgiven him for saying that. But he meant it sincerely. And of course he was right on a level, but it didn't soothe or pacify me. And so at the first opportunity, going home on a weekend, not on a weekend, a Saturday, you weren't allowed to spend the night at home except for once every 3 months at the end of term. And I had friends who were from Zaire and from Zambia, and they couldn't see their parents at all for 3 months. And here my parents were, within 100 miles of the school, so it wasn't that bad. But I went home, I locked myself in my room, and I wrote a note, and I slid it under the door. I'm not going back. I need to be home. As it happened, we had company that day. It was horrible, When the company left, they tried to console me and cajole me out of my room. I only got out of the room and ran into the forest and said, I'm not going. You can homeschool me, I said. Well, several hours followed of tears and pain and anguish, all of us, and we ended up sitting in the living room. And my dad says, well, you really can't go back, can you? And I said, no, I can't. So he walked to the phone, and he picked up the phone. And I said, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm calling the Foreign Mission Board, and I'm telling them we'll have to go back to the States because we care so much for your education. Now, I've told that story to a therapist or two, and they said, But I can tell you the effect it had on me, thanks be to God. My parents were going to give up whatever they were doing for me. And somehow in that moment, I found a strength that was way beyond me. I couldn't conjure it up. It wasn't mine. It came from somewhere else. And suddenly I was willing to go back. It wasn't easy, but I got over it, and it ended up being some of the most life-giving 3 years of my life. And wouldn't you know, when I graduated from NC State with a degree in industrial arts education, I went back to that school to teach. And you know what? Those kids at that school, I could spot them when they were homesick. And they knew that I could see them. And so that suffering that I endured at that point in my life came full circle and became useful. And I was able to comfort others in their suffering. And you know that concept. Henry Nouwen calls it the wounded healer. And so I just ask us to pause for a minute in this conversation. What are we doing with our suffering? Richard Rohr says, pain that is not transformed is always transmitted. Are we allowing God to transform our suffering, our pain, our hate? Mission involves being in those places, in the places of suffering. It also involves being sent, and I have to say that's sort of our primary paradigm, the Great Commission, go ye into all the world. I like Luke a little bit more myself, the word of the Lord in front of you. But mission involves some kind of action, some act of solidarity with people in those circumstances. And so this is why we often think of mission as being sent somewhere to do something. It involves actually being active, actually engaging and doing something. It does, and that is so important. And just like anything else, we can take that too far. So Melody and I, in 2005, we had a new vision for how we were going to change the world in Kenya. And so we identified 8 provinces of Kenya that were the poorest of the poor, where we were going to go and institute with the communities early childhood development, because the age group between 3 and 6 are the most vulnerable children. And if we could save those children and allow them to get an education, we stop a whole lot of bad stuff from happening, from migration to overpopulation to a number of things. I explained a little bit about this earlier. And so we found ourselves the very first, there's a thing about choosing sort of the worst places to do your work. You think that's all romantic. It's actually hard, because those are the hardest people to deal with. It's the most difficult. So I was on the edge of Lake Baringo with the Ilchamus people, and a woman by the name of Doreen Adundo was a missionary from her Kenyan church in Nairobi, sent to be a missionary to the Ilchamus people, and she thought of starting some kind of a school. Well, we came to partner with her, which was a hallmark of what we tried to do, is not come in with our own thing, but to look at the strengths and the assets of the community and join their thing. That's how work endures. Otherwise, it's just Mzungu coming in from the outside with their answers, and as soon as they go, it's done. So we've tried over the last 20 years to engage in work that is dreamed up from the ground, participatory work. So Doreen had started, and she needed help, and we sat together and decided we need to build a permanent building. And so here I am, after months of planning. I've put up the steel structure, and I like that sort of thing, so mixing concrete. And I had imported a block machine from South Africa. Stabilized soil block, where you mix 10% of the mixture of dirt and a little bit of sand, depending on the soil construction, and you mix it with cement and a little water, and you feed it into a hopper, and this hydraulic press comes over, and it compresses it into a block that is like a tongue and groove kind of a block. It fits together, interlocks with the others, and with no mortar. So you get these blocks, and you let them cure for a couple of weeks underneath a shelter under plastic, and then you just build with those blocks in between the structure poles of the small school that I was building. So I was trying out this design. And one day I was really excited, because this is the day we actually get to put the blocks in the wall. It's in the 4th month now, and here we are, finally building the wall. And I'm standing there laying the blocks in the wall. And I'm on a ladder on the inside, and the gable wall is about, 6 feet up, and I'm on a ladder lifting these blocks with my team. And in the distance, there's a guy coming with a bicycle. One guy walking, one guy pushing a bicycle. And they're coming our way. So, folks, if I could show you an image, we are out in the middle of nowhere. It looks like desert, acacia trees, a few huts, but in the middle of windswept nowhere. And these guys coming, I knew that they needed something. And I have a, big, sturdy Land Cruiser pickup truck with 800 liters of water in the back to mix the concrete. And usually when people would come to the site, it was for me to help them transport something. So my wheels are turning. Oh, how am I going to say no? And so the guy comes up and he talks with a few of the folks that are working on this building with me. And so I know Swahili fluently. I don't know Ma, which is the language of the Ilchamus people. So they were talking in Kima. And the site went a little bit sort of quiet. I didn't really notice. I was building the wall after all. And the man comes up to me in Swahili. He says, Mzee or Bwana, can you help me go and recover that which the water has stolen today? Well, even knowing Swahili, that one was a bit of a ringer for me. And I thought for a minute, but not for very long because I was busy. And I said, I thought, does this guy, did his water tank get stolen? Anyway, it's too much to think about. I'm busy, I'm building the wall. And I just said, I'm here to help build a school for your children. I'm sorry, I've got to concentrate on this. I can't help you with what you need today. And he kind of looked at me with a look that I won't soon forget. Not an angry look, just a, And he turned around and he walked off. And my sight was quiet. So it didn't take me long, 2 minutes or so, I'm realizing, okay, there was something happened here that I'm not aware of. And so I asked my guys, I said, and Doreen, I said, what did he actually say? He asked you to come and get that which the water had stolen from him. And I said, well, what does that mean? I mean, He said, Sam, they knew the rest of the story that I didn't have time to listen to. This man's son is an epileptic, and he was sitting on the bank of the river fishing, and he had a seizure, and he rolled into the river, and he drowned, and they're asking you to go and help retrieve the body with your truck. And I said, I'm here to build a school for your children. I can't help you right now. You see, for me at that moment, doing something was more important than anything else because I was in control of that. And I was doing a good thing, mind you. And we ended up building 14 of these, and they've transformed certain communities. But in that moment, something more was required. I actually needed to listen. I actually needed to be there. Well, the moment that I heard that, I jumped in the pickup and we took off after these people and stopped them. They were still in the distance, and I said, look, I'm an idiot. I didn't understand you. Get in, let's go. And so we did. And this man got in the front seat, and we drove, and it was about 2 miles through no road, just going towards some river somewhere. And we met about 6 men in the path carrying a body that was wrapped up in a cloth on their shoulders. And I stopped the car, and we put the body and all of the men who were carrying him in the back of the pickup, and we drove. And I asked the man, who was the boy's father, I said, where do you want to go? He said, Nyumbani, I want to go home. I said, show me. So we drove, and we get to the house. He asks when we get there, where is Mama? Mama is still digging in the field. Before his wife got home, the boy was buried in his yard. No mortuary, buried the same day. And I watched him shed one tear. I had no words, folks. I didn't know what to say. Isn't this like sort of the great moment that the missionary is supposed to come up with something and make everything fine? I had no words. I was just devastated. First at my own self, beyond that, at his situation. So I sat with him through that, and I left. And I couldn't work for about 3 days. I just couldn't. and I stayed in camp for a few days, and then I got back to work, and I came and I saw him, and I went to him right away, and I said, Jose, how are you? And he just says, this is life in areas of the world where people are used to life and death. He said, we've healed, we're moving forward. I've encountered that man several times since, with pain. But every time I relearn the lesson of the importance of accompaniment, of being there, of being present without doing anything. I don't know if you guys noticed in the last 2 weeks the passing of Paul Farmer. Does that name ring a bell? I urge you, it's on Netflix, go and see Bending the Arc, the story of Paul Farmer. Paul Farmer is the founder of Partners in Health in Haiti. He's a famous doctor. He's responsible for the global protocol for treating resistant TB, drug-resistant TB, and so many other things. And he died in a hotel room in Rwanda where he had started a medical school in Rwanda. An amazing man with far reach. One of his colleagues from college is now the head of the World Bank. I mean, it's an amazing story. But Paul came up with this concept of, I don't speak French, but in Haiti, accompagnature, accompanier, accompaniment, accompanier. And the way of his going back, the way of his dealing with people was not just to treat them, but was to actually, when they came with a malady, he would walk to their place and see why. Why is this person suffering this way? Is it environment? What is it? And he would walk with people and be with people, and that's what made him so famous. Accompaniment. And I think that's what essentially Paul is talking about. And that's what we mean when we say presence matters. It's not a white person from North America going to live overseas. Our field personnel are embedded in community, and they accompany people on their journey, and they learn from people. It's not a one-way street. As much as you give, you are given. And that attitude of accompaniment is critical for mission. So when you give to the offering of global missions, you set yourselves on the path of accompaniment. When you pray for field personnel, you're putting your love into action. When you participate as an encourager church, you're opening yourselves up to experience both the comfort and the suffering that comes with mission. And I know you're doing so much more. I know of your partnerships with Metanoia, your walk for water mission. I used to ask groups who wanted to come to Kenya, my prerequisite, I would ask them, so what are you doing where you are? And if they answered nothing, then they couldn't come, because that's just voyeurism. You know, you go to Africa to do something or whatever that you're not willing to do at home. That's ridiculous. What about justice here? What about the scales in our eyes here? And if you do come to Africa, I want it to be about what you can learn from the people there, not what you can teach the people there. And then as you sit at their feet and learn from them, the two of you can do something good together. That was our philosophy. I know you're already doing that in this community. May your tribe increase. Thank you.
Christ has given his life for us.
Let us offer ourselves and our gifts to God.
O God, we have beheld your goodness to us.
Accept the offering of the work of our hands, and use us for the sake of Christ, in whose name we pray. Amen.
So what is our invitation to on a morning like this? It is to be on mission with impatient endurance. It is to join with refugees in our own community in helping them find a new place, a new life. It is to give generously to the offering for global missions. It is to pray for our field personnel. It is to show acts of solidarity with those who are suffering, and to find ways to turn our own suffering into being useful for others. It is to be relevant in this world while listening for that which the water has taken away. It is to realize that our presence matters. So what ways are we living out our promise to serve God to the end? What ways are you living out your promise that you are about to sing, your promise to serve God until the end. Let us think on this invitation as we sing together.
Join with me. Lord, help us to see, to really see inside of ourselves where we bear suffering and hurt or where we have been comforted. Help us to deal with that suffering so that we can deal with those who suffer. Help us to be willing to receive comfort so that we will be willing to give comfort. And then may we take up our rightful place in active service, walking with, doing with, serving with, as one beloved community. And to all this, God, say yes. Amen.